Welcome to another great episode of PassionateSoccerCoach.com. I'm your host, Alden Bislagic, and in today's discussion, we're going to be talking about goalkeepers, leadership, and their development. We have a very special guest today, Dan Ford Hunt, the only man in the house. Welcome, Dan. Nice to have you here.
Good morning, Coach. How we doing?
Good, excellent. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sounds great. So Dan Ford Hunt, resident of the beautiful city of Lowell, Massachusetts. I am goalkeeper staff with Mass Youth Soccer. I'm the East goalkeeper coach with FC Stars. I've got about 15 good years of experience coaching our goalkeepers from, little tykes all the way up to college and, USYS regional. So I'd like to think over the years I've had the ability to coach some really good goalkeepers and some really good people. And I think that's sort of what we're going to be talking about today is that role of the goalkeeper. And I'm, again, really happy to be here.
Excellent. Welcome, Dan. This is one of my favorite topics, goalkeepers. As we spoke earlier, I don't think everybody recognizes the importance of a good goalkeeper. So what's your approach on developing, young goalkeepers? How do you recognize, how do you spot the talent? What's your approach?
It's funny. The role of the goalkeeper, first of all, in my lifetime has changed completely. When they changed the rules back in the early 90s, you used to be able to pass the ball back directly to the goalkeeper. They could pick it up and, distribute it. And there were all sorts of rules that have changed over the years. The 3-step rule, folks that are our age will remember the 3-step rule. Once the goalkeeper had the ball, they could only take 3 steps before they could distribute it. Now they can run around and do all sorts of stuff. So, in my lifetime, the role of the goalkeeper has gone from simply one of a shot stopper to now another player. You are literally the 11th player. So what we're looking for in young goalkeepers really is we're looking for someone who has a love for the game, first of all. Second of all, a little bit brave. When you have a bunch of kids sort of in a circle or you're, doing a rondo or you're just sort of playing around, you're looking for somebody that's, definitely, the one that takes charge, the one that, isn't standing back in the crowd, the one that, is really at the front of a lot of the lines and, really that person that's sort of taking charge. And, I said bravery earlier. That's the big key, especially with young goalkeepers, because you're teaching the children to do something that's not natural. When you see something flying at you, our instinct is to get out of the way. With a goalkeeper, you've got to be the person that puts their body in front of it. And, when we're doing those initial clinics and camps and we're looking to see, who that next batch of goalkeepers are, those are some of the qualities and some of the, things that we're looking for.
So how do you, teach that taking charge? How do you teach, because taking charge is pretty much taking the leadership step, right? How do you teach that?
It's tough to teach simply because, especially with younger children, you've got the kids that they want to be first. They're always putting their hand up. If you ask them a question, they're always the first person to put their hand up. Those are little glimpses into the type of person that they are. You've got some kids that, they'll just put their hand up in hopes that you'll call on them and then they freeze, right? But then you've got the kids that are genuinely the first, like they want to be the one to be picked. They want to be the one that the coach, looks at and looks to for answers. And, so teaching leadership is very difficult, I think, especially at the younger ages. I think you sort of have to look for those little behaviors. And then once you've identified those behaviors, then you can, kind of sharpen those rough edges and make them into the leader that you believe they can be. But ultimately, the child has to want to be, taught and want to be able to exude those leadership abilities.
I know, Dan, you specialize in goalkeeping, right? So you have to work with other fellow coaches to recognize potential goalkeepers, and you have to take their inputs as well, because I know, I don't specialize in goalkeeping. I have the basic training on it. But what I do is with the young players, with the young talented players. Sometimes in practice, you spot somebody like jumping, wanting to be in goal. Everybody wants to be goalkeeper until I tell them, hey, what I like to do is I like you to go to the goalkeeper training and see how do you like it. Because everybody wants to be a goalkeeper in practice. Everybody wants to make saves. Everybody wants to do this. I always say, like, oh, that's fine. I cannot play you until you've, been trained to play, that role. And you have to expose everybody. I like to, like, this is just my philosophy. I like to rotate players. I like to expose them to the goalkeeping because they're gonna love it. I started doing this 15 years ago, and now everybody has to play every role on the field. And goalkeeper, to me, it's one of the most pivotal roles on the field. It's so important. I don't think everybody recognizes the importance, because if you have a good goalkeeper, it can make a difference, because it stops, the other teams from scoring goals, and you can, have more chances to score goals against them. So, like, it takes time to nurture and develop that important individual on the field.
For sure.
Like, it's just funny. Like, so you have to also partner with other coaches. The point I was trying to make is, so working with other coaches, recognizing that, like you said, taking the charge, somebody wants to step up, somebody that has the curiosity to be a good goalkeeper, wants to continue, shows potential with that bravery, what you mentioned, potential to put his body or her body in front of the ball and not being afraid. I think that's huge.
Yeah. And you mentioned something really important, that at the younger ages, the U10, U11, U12, every child should play every position. At the regional level, at the Olympic development level, we don't start training goalkeepers until the U12 year. That's the first year in the Olympic development's, setup is under 12. It's that last year you're 9v9. So it's the last year that you're on the smaller goal, playing with a smaller ball. And really what we're looking for at the U12 level is, someone that's had a little bit of experience, who, again, shows those leadership qualities, has that bravery quality. They're not afraid to dive in front of the ball or get themselves in front of the play. But we're also looking at a player or a character that, we can mold over these next 4 and 5 years, right? Like I said, the U12 year, it's the last year where soccer has been adjusted for the age. Smaller ball, smaller goals, shorter time frames. Depending on where you live, you might be playing, 4 quarters, the American style, instead of 2 halves. So the game is not natural. But then when you get to that U13 year, that grade 5, 6, or however the states, classify it, now you're on the 11v11 frame. You're playing, 70 minutes. The game is now what the game will be forever. So that's why I firmly believe that the methodology that U.S. Soccer and, a lot of the states has sort of identified is the true goalkeeper training starts once you're in the 11v11 frame, once you're in the 11v11 setup, because these now are the foundations that we're teaching as goalkeeper coaches that are going to continue for essentially as long as you want to play. And I think that's important, because if you don't get a child at U11, U12 to get interested, once the game gets bigger, it's much more difficult to train them. It's much more difficult to, even the simple things like just making a catch, or, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, I'm sure, but set position, the ability to set your body to make a save, it becomes much more difficult as you get older, as you start to grow, as your muscles start to develop, but also as your soccer mind starts to develop. If you don't have those, those keystone skills at a younger age, it becomes very difficult. And, there's the stories of Hope Solo, who wasn't discovered as a goalkeeper until she was 17 or 18, punting, footballs at the back of her high school or something like that. Or, Matt Turner, unfortunately, was subject to one of the worst blunders in soccer history when he was at Fairfield. He was trying to catch a ball and he had his back turned to the field and he knocked it into his own net. And now he's the U.S. #1 and he's playing in Europe. So the ability to identify someone early, the ability to train that person and make them the goalkeeper that you think they can be, that's really what the goal is. And I think the approach that we've taken as coaches is the right one, by not identifying too early, but also, you want to try and give them a really good set of skills as early on as possible so that you can continue that path forward.
Can you mention some of the key technical skills a goalkeeper should have? Like you can go through it, let's say U7, U8, and then like when you keep going through all different like progressive stages, what are some of those skill sets?
Absolutely. So I think once we've identified that a child or a group of children want to become goalkeepers, the first thing that we have to get them comfortable with is their hands. One of the first sessions that I do with every age group, no matter if they're 7 years old or 22 years old, I remind the goalkeepers that the most important part of your job is the ability to use your hands. We're the only position player that can do it, and there's a lot that can happen with the ball in our hands. The game stops. When the goalkeeper has the ball in their hands, everything stops. So we have power that no other position has, right? So teaching them to be comfortable using their hands, to be comfortable wearing gloves. Not a lot of kids that are younger want to wear gloves. And, when you get further along in your progression, a good set of goalkeeper gloves is very important. You don't break your fingers, or, you feel a little bit more comfortable, but a good set of goalkeeper gloves is very underrated. And you want to get them involved, get the children used to and involved in the decision-making process of getting a good set of gloves. But U7, U8, U9, the whole focus should be comfortability with hands, and just, instead of ducking, put your head right there and make sure that you're catching the ball and you're getting in front of it. And then as you get to U10, U11, U12, you're now on the 9v9 frame. So now the net gets a little bigger, but now the field gets a little bigger, and now you add players. So instead of it being 5v5 or 7v7, now you're at 9v9. So now your responsibility is not just about this, catching the ball, making saves, deflecting, but now you have to start really thinking about what the players on the field are doing for you. And I remind all my goalkeepers again, your job is to make your job easy by telling the players in front of you what you need them, for them to do. So that's when we start to get their voice involved, and we start to teach some communication skills. It's all about dealing with something 20, 30, 40 yards up the field so it doesn't become an issue in coming at you. So that's the ages we start with the communication is, U10, U11, U12, because once you get, again, U13 and up, you're on the bigger field. It's, 11v11. You have to know what your defenders are doing. You have to know what the ability of your midfielders are. If you need them to come back, you have to know who you can distribute the ball to, like who's gonna take that first touch off a distribution, and or who's gonna be comfortable passing it back to you. And that's when we get U14, U15 and up. Now the goalkeeper not only is just, a conduit to catch the ball, but now they're that 11th player. And, the U.S. soccer model, and again, a lot of the models that the states are using, the goalkeeper is the start of buildup. So once you get to that U14, 15 age, their feet are just as important as their hands. And they've got to be able to demand the ball in certain situations so that we can start the attack. So it's really a walk before you run philosophy. We start with just having the ability to get in the way of the ball. And then the top progression is, instead of just getting in the way of the ball, you want the ball at your feet. You want the ball at your hands. You want to be the start of the attack.
Oh, excellent. Great points. You mentioned communication, which is one of the soft skills of a leader, right? And if you're starting to emphasize at U10 to U12 level, that's part of the communication. You take the stance and leadership as well. Goalkeepers, they see the whole field from the back, and they can understand with their, like you mentioned, understanding the game, and the soccer IQ has to start elevating, understanding the game, because it becomes crucial. Are you going to play short Are you going to play through ball? Are you going to go over the pressure? So you have to recognize that opportunity as well. So like that's why like understanding the moments of that play. Um, are there any special like training sessions or anything that you would encourage coaches out there to work with goalkeepers on communication, on distribution? Because you're dealing with kids. When you have like 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, they tend to be shy. They don't want to speak up. Is there anything that you can, some kind of tips, advice you can give to coaches, what you can do to encourage talking and standing up, be the leader, on the field?
Yeah, so I mean, it starts as simple and as fun as doing an icebreaker at the beginning of practice. What I like to do with the younger goalkeepers is we'll play some like a handball game, right? It's set up similar to a rondo or like monkey in the middle or something like that. But in order for the goalkeeper to get the ball passed to them or throw the ball to them, they have to call out their name. It starts as simple as that, as getting to know the names of your teammates. And then what I do, the next progression is, in order for me to throw you the ball, I have to say, Alden, 2 steps to the right. And then I throw the ball to them. So now you're encouraging direction and you're looking at space in a different way. And if I was to sit here and say it works perfectly every time, especially the first time, I'd be lying to you. But it's all about getting the young goalkeeper to look at things in a different light. For example, the whole space thing, we'll have, and every club coach out there knows this situation. You've got 4 teams playing on a half of a field because field space is at a premium. And then the goalkeepers, what I do where I coach with FC Stars is I'll get there nice and early. I'll carve out like a 20 by 20 space with cones, and that's my space, right? I don't let anyone else in it. That's my spot. And what I encourage the goalkeepers to do is we don't cluster, we spread out, and we utilize whatever space we have. So we're getting the goalkeepers to look at space as a commodity and not just green space on a field, right? So one session that I would encourage coaches to do, especially with the younger goalkeepers, is whoever is going to be playing goalkeeper that weekend, if you've got a schedule or if you've got a rotation or something like that, do some sort of an activity where the goalkeeper has got to give name recognition to his teammates or her teammates, and then also some simple direction or simple commands. Have them play out of the back. So when we do a playing out of the back session, when I was coaching my high school girls last year, I would make the goalkeeper start every play with the ball at their feet, and then we would have to build out. And the way that we would build out is through the goalkeeper, and then they would have to call for switches. And if the ball was turned over, they would have to call for shifts. And, so that's the older groups. But for the younger groups, again, just start them with their names, call out the players' names. If you're going to pass the ball to someone, call their name, tell them, where to go, take 2 steps to your right, open up using goalkeeper lingo. And there's some great resources out there about goalkeeper lingo. But that's the simplest way to start is just, by name recognition and some simple commands. And then your teammates will start to get used to your voice. And that's a whole nother thing, types of vocal cues, if you're just talking at a normal level or if you're screaming your head off, those mean different things to a goalkeeper. But that's at the basic level, Alden, that's what they should, what we should be doing.
Excellent. What about any always like a routine, like a consistent training routines for goalkeepers? What should they always consistently work? I know you mentioned hands. That's how you start their journey off. Then involve communication, distribution. But is there anything that coaches should be continuously working on with their goalkeepers, like a routine? And then a second part of the question is, what can the goalkeeper players do at home to keep enhancing their skills while adding to the the trainings that we do as coaches?
Absolutely. So I think it's very important for soccer coaches and for youth coaches especially to do 2 things. Number one, encourage every player to play goalkeeper. but make sure that if you have, a match on a Saturday or a match on a Sunday, let those children know at the last practice before the match that they're going to play goalkeeper, so that the children understand that their role is going to be a little bit different in that match day, right? So that's the first thing is prepare the children that are going to play goalkeeper on a specific day to let them know that they're going to be doing that, right? And then during that practice, I know it's hard, especially, the towns, it's still volunteer driven. And I'm telling you, the volunteer coaches is still the engine that drives this thing. We're both club coaches. So we're both, we both understand, the model that we're in. But I still think that the volunteer coach at those youngest ages are the foundation of what we as club coaches, state coaches, regional coaches are doing. So I'm speaking to, the volunteer and the paid professional right now. But once you have identified who that goalkeeper is, for your Saturday or your Sunday match, you do have to pay a little bit of attention to them during your training. And I know that's difficult. You got 14 or 15 kids, you're running around, you're trying to accomplish, whatever the task is of the day. But make sure that that child is 100% comfortable in the goal. The routine should be, warm them up, give them, some simple services to their hands, some simple services to their feet. It doesn't have to take the whole practice. It could be 10, 15 minutes at the beginning, and then, a 5-minute little, game at the end that is specific to the goalkeeper. I'm sure you've seen, I'll blame high school soccer for a second, but you see the warm up before the game and it's like a shooting gallery at the goalkeeper, right? Like it's for the shooters, it's for the attacking players, it's for the field players. That's not for the goalkeeper. So the cautionary tale there is just be careful about how much point blank shooting or attacking without defenders you do, especially pregame with a goalkeeper, because there's a whole mental thing, and that could be a whole nother podcast. But, just you want to make the goalkeeper feel good about themselves while still getting the training session topic, spoken about and get it accomplished. So it's a long-winded answer, but you really do need to identify who the goalkeeper is. Give them 10 or 15 minutes of your individualized time by making it simple for the goalkeeper to pick up the ball, get the ball in their hands, feel good about themselves, run the session, and then at the end, do some sort of a session or a drill or whatever you want to call it to really make the goalkeeper stand out. And you know what? A lot of times that's going to make the goalkeeper feel really good about themselves. So give them that individualized attention. And then you were saying what they can do at home. If you've got a ball on a wall, that's the best way to do it. And it doesn't have to be a soccer ball. It could be a tennis ball. It could be a lacrosse ball, something that you can throw or hit against a wall or a stationary, something that, isn't going to move, or mom or dad even, and just get the ball in your hands. That's the best thing to do, because getting a ball in your hands in the set position sets everything else up. Diving, jumping, leaping, everything starts from that set position.
Oh, excellent. Good advice. You mentioned mental toughness, and as a goalkeeper, you're the last line of defense, right? And you make one simple mistake, of course, it's going to cost a goal. How do you overcome those challenges as a goalkeeper? So, it's okay to make a mistake as long as you learn, right? That's what we keep saying as coaches. Try to minimize mistakes, because I tell you, that mental mindset, if you make a mistake, then it can go spiral downwards instead of it's okay to make a mistake, just move on, right? How do you coach your goalkeepers to have that strength? Because you got to have a particular mindset to be a goalkeeper. You can't put everybody in the goal. And then one bad thing is goalkeepers know when they make a mistake, you lose games. And they don't want to do that, and they're so hard on themselves. But how do you teach goalkeepers to stay strong in games, in practices, not to be hard on themselves? That's one thing I'm trying to figure out as well as I'm in my tenure.
It's interesting because you say, how do you teach mental toughness? And this is my opinion, I think mental toughness, you either have it or you don't. And, again, you're not teaching mental toughness. What you're doing is you're reinforcing good habits. And, so what I would say is I'll start with, I was at an ID camp. This is, 6 or 7 years ago. I was recruiting for a college, and I was in an ID camp, 17, 18-year-old young women that are playing in this big ID camp. And we had the goalkeepers on the side, and we were just doing some shot stopping, right? And every time this young lady made a mistake, she would slap her hands on her hips, almost like punishing herself, right? And I brought her over and I said, "Hey, what's going on? Like, why do you do that?" And she said, "Oh, every time, I make a mistake, I hit myself so that I, don't remember the mistake I made, but I remember how much it hurts." And I said, "Does that work?" Like, I genuinely was concerned because, that's not what we want to encourage. Those types of behaviors, that's not what we want to encourage, because again, mistakes are okay. Mistakes are learning moments, so we had a quick chat and I said, "Okay, well, why don't you go play in this next scrimmage? I just want to, see how you do and this and that." And so the young lady gave up a goal in the first 2 or 3 minutes. It was not her fault. It was a breakdown 15 yards up the field. It was a 1v1 situation. And you know what? Goal scorers will score goals. And after the ball went in the net, this young lady slaps herself like twice or 3 times. So I asked the coach to pull her off the field. And so he pulled her off the field. And I said, "So what's going on?" And she says, "Oh, that was my fault." And I said, "Tell me what was your fault?" And she went 30 seconds into saying, "Well, I let the ball go in the goal." And I said, "But let's think about the entire play for a second. Where did it break down?" And she said, "Oh, it broke down here." What could you have done in that moment to make it better? "Oh, I could have, communicated or this or that or the other thing." And after about 15 minutes of talking about this, she started to realize that it's not always her fault. So that's the first sort of pillar right there, is that you have to encourage your goalkeepers that it isn't always their fault. Fault is a really tough word, especially for younger children to hear. That's your fault. You're used to hearing that, at home or in school or, in situations where you have to do something. Soccer, you don't have to do it. You do it because you love it. You do it because you have joy. You do it because it gives you a sense of, self-worth or whatever your reason for playing is. Goals aren't always your fault. Now, if it goes through your legs or it goes through your hands, well, we can talk about that. But a lot of times goals are scored 25 yards, 30 yards up the field, 30 seconds ahead of when the shot actually takes place. So you talk about teaching mental toughness. I think you almost have to teach them and you have to reinforce that it's not their fault all the time, and then start to get them to look into solving those riddles. The ball was 40 yards up the field. There was 2 through balls, and because your defender didn't move or because you didn't move your defender, that's how the, attacking began, and that's how the goal was scored. So putting the goalkeeper in that mindset on how to diagnose when things are happening, when do we need to shift somebody over, when do we need to move a player, then we can get into when do you need to come off your line, when do you need to be aggressive, when do you need to stay home. Like, those are the things that sort of are given birth to, after the fact, if that makes sense. It all starts with putting the goalkeeper in the headspace that it's not always your fault, as long as you do everything that you possibly can to avoid the situation. So again, a long-winded answer. What can coaches do, to sort of help with that? Again, put the goalkeeper in as many real-life situations as you possibly can. In a training session, you've got your warm-up, your build-up, and then you're working through team dynamics, and then you're probably scrimmaging. Put the goalkeeper into a real-life situation as early as possible so that they can now get used to seeing different situations. That's the best thing a coach can do. Doesn't matter the age. Get the goalkeeper involved as quickly as possible.
I like the way you phrased it. Make sure that the goalkeeper understands it's not always their fault. What I usually tell my team is, It's a team sport. We lost the ball at the front, which caused the counterattack, right? Which caused whatever it is. And you're gonna win games together, and we're gonna lose games together. So, like, as long as you, like you said, do the best to your abilities and to your knowledge, like whatever you've been trained. Like, I cannot expect my players to do more whatever we haven't covered. But I think you nailed the nail in the head. Like it's not always the goalkeeper's fault. I tell you right now. And they take, like, sometimes they take, oh, it's my fault. This, no. Like, we lost the ball on a poor pass, which caused down numbers, counter, whatever it is, out of position, and like there's nothing the goalkeeper can do sometimes. And players look to go, why didn't you say? I'm like, why did you lose the ball? Why did you give it up? Why did you pass the ball incorrectly? Like, and the message, like, coaches play a big role, and then parents as well. Like when parents, like, they see and like they start looking. I said, hey, there's only one voice. You should listen to your coach.
That's right.
Ignore the noise. Who cares what happens outside? Because they can, work with the confidence. Like, and when you have a goalkeeper that has no confidence, it makes it really hard in goal, and they're going to start being out of position, out of line, make bad passes, and so on. So as coaches, we play a pivotal role in the development, in the decision making, in their growth, in the soccer IQ, and you have to keep exposing it into real life situations. That's fantastic. What do you want to leave other coaches, fans, parents, like some kind of note? What do you want to tell them?
I the one thing I would like to sort of impart on everybody. And first of all, thank you very much for having me on this podcast. This has been great. I hope someone learned one or two things out of this. But it's kind of funny to say it, but I like to tell the parents, goalkeepers are no different than your defenders, your midfielders, your forwards. So we don't want to treat them differently. But you also have to acknowledge that there is a special skill set that is involved with being a goalkeeper, right? The worst thing a parent or a fan can do, honest to God, is harp on a goalkeeper for a mistake. I was a goalkeeper myself. My son played goalkeeper up until he was in college. And the worst thing I did as a coach or as a goalkeeper parent was harp on the mistake. We would have that hour ride home between the game and getting home. And the worst thing I did was we would talk about it. And I would realize later that that's not helping him. Like, he already feels bad enough as it is, so just encourage, if your soccer player is a goalkeeper that day, especially for the younger parents out there, if your son or daughter was the goalkeeper on that day, and, I don't know if they keep score at all the ages, but let's say they give up 4 or 5 and they really feel bad about themselves. That's okay. That's all part of the process. Just, thank them, say, hey, Jimmy, you did a great job today. How did you feel by playing goalkeeper today? That's a great question, because then you'll be able to hear, well, I gave up a lot of goals. I don't like that. Well, that's not an answer we want to accept, but at least we know that, the child felt something. Or if they had a great game, congratulate their successes. Don't harp on it. Be like, oh, you're going to be the next pro, blah, blah, blah. But, congratulate the successes. But really the biggest question that we can ask as coaches and as parents and as fans to your goalkeeper is, how did it feel? What did you go through as goalkeeper today? What were some of the likes and don't likes? And just let the kid talk. Let the child express their feelings. And, if you think it's something that is worth exploring as parents, talk to the coach. Send them an email. Send them a text message. Speak for your child, because when they turn 15, 16, 17, the coaches don't want to talk to the parents anymore. They want to get to know the children, and they want the kids to express themselves. So, the biggest thing, again, I can impart on everybody out there is, if your young child expresses, a want to play goalkeeper, let them. If a coach identifies your child as a goalkeeper, let them try it. Don't be the parent that say, no, I don't want my kid to play goalkeeper. He might get hurt or she might get hurt. Every soccer player in every position, there is that inherent risk. You wouldn't say no to being a striker. Try not to say no to being a goalkeeper, and then encourage the children to try everything. because you never know. You know, for every Matt Turner and Hope Solo, there's a kid that's 8 years old who could be the next number one. So that's what I would say.
A great point. You said your son played goalkeeper. My son got into it as well early on. It was throughout COVID time.
Mhm.
He used to put a lot of pillows. He used to watch goalkeeper saves. He used to call himself stopper and like goal stopper, right? And it was so much fun to watch. And he used to like measure himself how high he jumped to save it out of a corner. And I was like, wow, you know, I have a potential. I never played in goal because they tried to put me in Germany when I was playing in Germany. They're like, oh, this guy's tall. You should be a goalkeeper. They put me in goal. I got so many goals. I never played goalkeeper again. Ended up playing on opposite and scoring a lot of goals.
There you go.
But no, that's really important. Find the passion and send them to training. Like even now, I keep telling my son, hey, go to training, go goalkeeper training. If you have the passion for it, because you never know. As you mentioned, Matt Turner, Manuel Neuer from Germany, he became a goalkeeper at 14.
Yep.
He was a field player until then. That's unheard of. Like one of the best goalkeepers in the world, just like Matt Turner. Like you discover talents at different stages in your journey,
Yep.
and you find a passion for it. You have to know the game as a goalkeeper, and you know that then it becomes important to become the 11th player on the field. You have to be good with your feet as well as your hands. But no, that's great point you're leaving everybody with. I appreciate your feedback, your time. Thank you again for being part of us. This is great, and look forward to seeing you in the fields as well. Hopefully we get to play each other pretty soon.
Absolutely. I'm glad. It was my pleasure to be here. And for everybody out there, enjoy the rest of the fall into the winter season.
Thanks, Dan.
We'll see you.